This is Water's Edge, and I'm John Waters. Join me as we have real conversations with the defenders and innovators shifting the balance of power in cybersecurity. Water's Edge is sponsored by iCounter, leading the third wave of cybersecurity with the industry's first counter-threat operating system. Errol Weiss, Chief Security Officer of the Health ISAC. Last 7 years, we've been friends for a long time. Errol, thanks for joining us today.
John, it's so great to be here with you. I love
Yeah, we can't go into all our storied past, but man, it's been a blast working with you and shaping our views of the industry together and shaping our views of all kinds of things outside the industry together. So for the audience here today, we're really in a good position to be talking with one of the very early stewards of this industry, and Errol Weiss, who, as we were shaping together really how you approach using intelligence as a lever to better manage risk in cyberspace, none better place to start than the NSA for that journey. So Errol, maybe you can give us an idea from how young Errol Weiss even gets the idea to go to the NSA. I don't think I ever heard of it, at the time that you had joined it. So give some early roots in the development there. Mission space, to the extent you can talk about it, would encourage you to move into the private sector, and then we'll pivot into your journey in the private sector.
it. All right. There's a lot there. Yeah. So keep me straight on this. So, yeah, the interest in NSA, it actually, we have to go back to my college days, which takes us back a long time ago. And my senior year, I was doing a major in computer engineering. And my senior year, I had a class in computer networks. And the project that year for me, I had chosen cryptography for some strange reason. I think I always enjoyed puzzles and scrambling and letters and whatever. And so I wanted to do some research in that. And of course, every research paper that I was reading at that time, if you think about this was, I hate to say it, the late 80s. Every research paper I was reading at the time was always mentioning NSA and the conspiracy theories about how they always had some backdoor into whatever you know, hardware was being built and whatnot. So I was always thinking, who are those NSA guys? What are they up to? What's going on? And then, of course, back in the old days, when you were interviewing for your first job out of college, you had to go to the career center and they had all the pieces of paper up on the wall. You got to put your name on there and sign up for an interview. And I'm like, whoa, I see NSA is coming to campus to do an interview. So, of course, I had to sign up. And it was so unique. It was so different from every other interview, which, go interview for a bank and they want to know what's your top strengths? What's your biggest weaknesses? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? The NSA interview was, have you ever tried to overthrow the U.S. government? And are you considered loyal Americans? Those were the kinds of questions. So they did a complete sales job on me, talking about all the great things that NSA was up to. And of course, cut the story short, I ended up there. First job out of college, I was actually on the SIGINT side of the house for the first couple of years, doing that mission, supporting that mission. That was fantastic. Had some great responsibilities and did some things that I couldn't believe a young 22-year-old, 25-year-old at the time was doing. And then later on, I was looking for a job change within there, and I ended up moving over to the InfoSec side of the house and found myself on a penetration test team. So there was a time I was behind the keyboard doing pen testing. I knew what I was doing, pretty good at it, had a lot of fun, learned a lot, learned a ton. And then years later, I had to call tech support to come fix my printer. So I lost all my technical skills, and here I am. So that's the kind of the NSA story.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, for most of viewers that don't even know this, there was no such official NSA until 1985. I believe that's right, isn't it? Was it 85?
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was 85. So those are the early days. They've been around longer, but this was certainly the early days. And then, when you moved out, you and I met almost 25 years ago. It's hard to believe it. More like 23 years ago, something like that.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
You moved on from the NSA, and then you found your way into a way to exercise the knowledge and experience you built in a practical application of it in the financial services industry. And that was my background. I came out from the financial services industry into the intelligence space. and you came from the intelligence space into the financial services industry. And that's kind of where we had a complimentary meeting of the minds. And at the time, it was the very early days of FS ISAC. And an FS ISAC back then, you'll remember all these early stories in 2003 and 2004. There were three vendors. It was iDefense that I was running at the time. It was Foundstone, George Kurtz was running at the time, and it was Archer. John Darbyshire was running at the time, and I was on Archer's board and running iDefense, and George, of course, everybody knows from CrowdStrike, and McAfee and Foundstone before that. And at that time, you learned in the NSA how important it was, both from an offensive how to attack and a defensive how to defend ecosystem risk. You're only as strong as your weak link. And when you looked at the financial services industry, there really wasn't a foundational ecosystem that was functioning. And so tell me, those early days of the FS ISAC, those conferences were small and everybody's highly engaged. That was the epicenter of financial system risk at the time. What was it like, and how did you help participate in that?
Yeah, and it was also, John, it was like really early, even in you thinking about the timing there, late 90s was still really nascent stages of online banking, even, when you think about how much was going on at the time way back then. And so I had left NSA. I ended up at SAIC working, they're a large government contractor at the time, and I ended up in a small commercial practice there that eventually got spun out to a subsidiary called Global Integrity. And we were doing commercial infosec, penetration testing, monitoring services, you name it, for all of these different companies, a lot in financial services, which was how I made so many friends in that industry at the time, because we were doing consulting services for them. And it was definitely, we were learning a lot as we were going along. And I remember years later hearing like a commercial on the radio for the local university advertising an infosec program, cybersecurity master or even a bachelor's program at the time. And I'm thinking like, wow, where was that when I needed it? We had to teach that all ourselves, had to learn it all ourselves. And so, yeah, definitely the time when I was later on after leaving there and ending up at Citibank, and then becoming very involved in the financial services ISAC. You and I spent plenty of time there as well together, working on those challenges. But yeah, still really early stages. And I think that FS ISAC financial services sector definitely paved the way when it came to info sharing. They were one of the first out of the gates, and then just, membership exploded, and they had a lot of people participating in it. And I think that the spirit of sharing was really good, particularly around the fact that everybody believed that bad security for one bank was bad for all of them, right? If word got out that online banking was not safe, it'd be a problem for everybody. And so we all kind of bandied together around that notion and helped each other out. And there was a lot of great sharing going on at the time as well.
Yeah, that's an important point. And it's cliche, you're only as strong as your weakest link. But when you think about it branding wise and reputation wise, in the early ages of the .com revolution and the e-commerce revolution, and trust in commerce over phones and online, when it comes to people's money, they're afraid of like waking up and all their money's gone out of their bank with no trace routes, to where it went. It was really unnerving back then as that industry was going on. So I think it was important you guys saw the bigger picture. Cred to you on that. And then you went into Citibank, and we worked together in the early days of Eyesight Partners. And at Citibank, you also took an ecosystem view because you're a huge global bank and owned risk around the world that you couldn't actually directly control. I remember the early days, you guys owned Banamex, for example, down in Mexico. So, that was your first real entry into big financial systems from the inside of a bank, not looking at it from the outside at the ecosystem level, but the inside of a bank. And how long did it take you to get up to speed, if ever, on the full bank infrastructure, the full mission of trying to manage security? Because you were running the intelligence function then, for the bank in those early days of Intel-led security.
Yeah, I mean, it took me, I was there for about 2 years, doing various things. I was working um, uh, for, let's say, the default CISO at the time, because it really wasn't the position there necessarily at the time when I was there. But doing things like incident response and some governance projects and working on things like that. And then I kind of fell into a situation where I saw an opportunity because all these different parts of the city were purchasing services, and part of that service was an Intel feed, let's say, but nobody was capitalizing on that. So I was basically going into existing contracts and saying, hey, can I tap that and grab that and use that and leverage it for other parts of the corporation? And that kind of helped build out all of the feeds that we started gathering up in the beginning, which were essentially, I say, free because somewhere in the bank they were already paying for it. So we were just capitalizing on all of that.
So what you're saying is you ran the ISAC inside of City.
Exactly, a little info sharing going on. But then, I think the bigger vision came through, and we were able to really capitalize on the need to create a centralized intelligence function. And John, by the time I left there in 2016, we had 40 people on that team operating across the U.S., Europe, and Singapore and Australia. I mean, it was incredible. Just an unbelievable team doing some great work, and for thousands of internal customers across the globe at Citi. It was pretty amazing.
Yeah. I mean, think about the 10 years from there and how the world's changed. The foundational premise of Intel-led security is there's going to be a continuous reuse of adversary tools and tradecraft over and over again. You leapfrog forward into today's day and age when you can conduct reconnaissance against a target in a very accelerated way, in many ways an autonomous AI-enabled way, to build a picture of a target and then spin up bespoke capability designed to maintain a durable advantage over that singular target. The age of reuse is going to come into challenge. I mean, because the process by which Intel-led security runs, as you know, has a set of handoffs and very little accountability, from absorbing and consuming the intel to sense making of it, to correlation against detection rules and other internal data, to downstream activities of hunt teams and detection teams and patching teams and configuration teams, to somebody does something someday. There's no visibility. I mean, the way Intel-led security industry has spawned and matured, it's now a major segment of the way we defend in cyberspace. How do you see that coming to age now and dealing with this mammoth revolution in the industry, and put your hat on leapfrogging all the way forward through FS ISAC now into your Health ISAC, where now you're responsible for one of the most sensitive interconnected ecosystems in the world. And health is personal, financials personal, but health is personal. And that whole ecosystem is unbelievably intertwined with a backdrop of AI enabled adversaries. How do you start squaring that and thinking about how do you fight today's fight?
Yeah, I definitely want to talk quite a bit about that and where things are going. It's just fascinating, and it changes so fast, right? By the time this podcast gets out into the public, something else big will happen in AI, and we'd be like, how did we miss that when we were just talking about this? But on the health side, as you were saying, it's been a really interesting transition coming from the finance sector to this role, and I think ironically, money coming to the health sector, it's the absence of money that's really creating some of the biggest challenges for the CISOs that I talk to, especially in healthcare. They just do not have the budgets to properly protect their networks. And again, think about the solution sets that you described earlier, the enormous size of those organizations in the finance sector. Between Citibank, when I left there, they had like 2,000 people in InfoSec, right? Look at these other organizations, and especially in healthcare, there's no way they've got InfoSec teams anywhere near that to be able to protect this stuff. So they don't have the budget, they don't have the people, they don't have the technology that they need to protect all of that. So that's one of the big challenges, just starting right off the bat. From the good news from the InfoSec and info sharing standpoint, I think that as good as it was in the finance sector, it's even better in the health sector. Um, People, to the point you mentioned earlier, people believe in the mission. So all of the companies, all the hospitals that I work with, their mission ultimately at the end of the day is to help improve people's lives or save people's lives. And that mission transcends into IT and InfoSec teams as well. And they really get the idea that, hey, I can learn, I can improve security at this organization by participating in these communities of info sharing, and we can ultimately do a better job of helping our patients, helping our customers out on down the road. So that's been really inspirational to see that.
Yeah. I mean, I guess squaring those two, it makes an awful lot of sense why you've been so successful. I mean, you've got scarcity of resources, you've got an exploding problem, and you've got mission oriented people. And the way to effectively reconcile that equation is you have to share resources, and you have to share information. And the Health ISAC is a mechanism to do that, where you can help pool resources in an effective way to enable better ecosystem protection for the healthcare sector and enable them to execute mission for a lot less money than if they all did it themselves. So through that kind of economic lens, what types of services does the Health ISAC provide its membership? How do you tier it? How do you procure it? How do you think about that shared service model where you can bring efficient solutions to an industry that has financial constraints, but has a real important mission to execute?
Yeah, the other interesting thing, just thinking about the makeup of the Health ISAC and the membership there. When I was looking into the job change, I was thinking just healthcare, and it's a whole lot more than just healthcare. I mean, our membership is approaching 1,200 member organizations right now. We've got about 15,000 people that we're blasting alerts out to every day, and about half of them are in healthcare, but the other 50% of that is all made up of things like pharmaceutical companies, insurance companies, health IT organizations, the ones that create the electronic health record software that all our physicians and hospitals use, and then medical device manufacturers. So it's a lot different from the finance sector world that I came from, where a lot of them would be treated as sort of vendors. They're actually in this internal network of community. So, just like every other ISAC, it's all about info sharing, best practices, state of the art, what people are working on, challenges, issues, and things of that sort. There's a lot of the day-to-day sharing that's happening amongst various working groups. So, just think about birds of a feather getting together. It could be health providers that are getting together to share notes with each other, or it could be disciplines where you've got like incident responders that are getting together and sharing like IR plans, for example, and learning from each other on how to do that, or threat intel professionals. So there's a lot of, and it was similar to my experience at the FS ISAC, where I thought that a lot of the value that I personally got out of it, and maybe even the organization got out of it, was participating in those working groups and really learning from each other. And I always like to tell the story, like even if I was coming from an organization like Citibank with 2,000 people in InfoSec behind me, I could always go to a meeting like that and learn from somebody. And I remember like even some small bank in upstate New York that I never heard of. I'm like learning from this person, and I'm like, my gosh, where are they getting this from? This is amazing stuff. So somebody's always got something to share.
Yeah, that's an interesting view. I mean, you think of, necessity is the mother of all invention. And when they've got scarce resources and a mammoth mandate and mission, I mean, you have to share resources, and the biggest resource is knowledge. And the thing that I tell our team is, if you're doing something the same way as you were doing it a year ago, it's probably wrong. And it used to be, if you're doing something the same way you did it 10 years ago is wrong, maybe 5 years ago is wrong, but not last year. By last year, you honed your trade and you know what to do and you really become an expert in your field. But the way we apply our skills against the problem set today has so many enabling capabilities that weren't available yesterday. So as you dig into your membership, looking for people to share best practices, are you reshaping the way you look at it? right? It used to be all the old sage, they've got all the words of wisdom and how they've attacked a problem in the past and learned from 35 years experience. But today there's so many new and novel approaches to tackling the same problem across all spectrums of life, old, young, every discipline, every background, that are coming up with new and novel ways how to conduct themselves in this AI enabled adversary world. How are you seeing the changing inputs in terms of your best practices, where they're coming from, the types of cross-functional advice you're getting? It's probably reshaping the way you think about bringing people to the podium to teach everybody what they've learned.
Yeah, and I think also, I think the diversity also is just really, really enabling a lot of that new thought leadership as well, where it's, the power of the network is global. And so we've got these working groups and memberships that are coming from countries all over the globe, and we're enabling those working groups to take advantage of that. Where some of our more popular working groups, we may have a branch or a chapter that meets in the U.S., one in Europe, and one in APAC, for example, and then we figure out a way to tie all of that together and share amongst those groups. It's the challenge of the time zones, right? Nobody wants to be up at 2 a.m. to join a working group call that, in their time zone. So we try to make them available at times that work for everybody. But yeah, I think the new thoughts, the new fresh perspectives that are coming from some others, especially because they're dealing with different regulators and different cultural issues that could bring some new light to the table. So I think that's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, I think an interesting way where you can cross time zones and skill sets and put you in the talent identification seat as you look abroad and look at different size organizations and different part of health system. To your point, insurers, the actual delivery of the service themselves, the IT systems, and almost look for people that can teach the most from all aspects and all fields. So, for example, how are you leveraging AI to execute your incident response mission more effectively in your organization? How are you leveraging AI to, you can almost put that prefix into every traditional, field of discipline, and almost crowdsource the best advice you can get, from all these different participants around the world. You might find somebody at a small healthcare provider in some rural town in India that's just joined the Health ISAC that has some brilliant approach, and everybody can learn from it. That's a cool role.
I mean, it's fun, and it's always inspiring when you see that happening, and I think we see that happen a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you have a kind of a forcing function with all your conferences and meetings and webinars where you're trying to source those new and novel approaches and then systematically deliver that knowledge to your membership or the larger community? How do you think about tackling that problem?
Yeah, I think a lot of the working groups will look at that and try to figure out a way to capture that and be able to produce it in a white paper or some kind of a best practices paper. So we see, sort of that thought leadership come out and expressed in those ways. That seems to work pretty well.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, and you mentioned the conferences. There's plenty of that happening at the conferences and just trying to learn and share from each other right there, real time.
Yeah. And it takes all comers, right? I mean, whether they're a vendor selling something, whether it's an operator operating it, it's people running the ecosystem like you are. Ideas you welcome from everywhere, and just spread the good ones as wide as you can, So I think that would be an interesting segment if you had 3-minute snippets, 5-minute snippets, pick a discipline, crowdsource the best approach to it. Say, hey, in the next 3 to 5 minutes, give us a rapid fire description of how you leverage AI to make your function 10x more productive than it was even a year ago. Go through your own kind of quality control filter, and that would be fun to broadcast. Just run them, incident response, forensics, hunt, every different function, and just kind of stack them in there. That would be really That would be a big draw. I'd love to see that.
Yeah, there's so many. There's some great use cases out there. I love it. Yeah, it's been really interesting to watch.
Well, don't you love when everybody gives you all these opportunities to improve and then hang up? You gotta go do it.
Toss the grenade over, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. So you've been there for 7 years. You have 1,200 members. Tell me how it's grown and what the catalyst for growth has been. What have been the key drivers to increase the membership?
Of course, it's been me, John.
Of course, we all know the final answer, but hey, we still have a few more minutes, so you can brag a little bit.
No, it's yeah, we probably like tripled in size since I've been here in the 7 years, and I think it's it's sort of the classic nonprofit organization growth path where you know you're small in the beginning, you're so revenue dependent, you can't grow unless you get more members, and we got to a point where let's see, that was 2019, so probably about 16, 17, there was a real commitment from the board to really start investing and hire staff because when I got here to Health ISAC, there was no staff doing information sharing. It was all volunteer driven. So an organization would find something and they would rely on an email list to get it out to everybody else. I mean, it was really, I'll say, ugly,
How many members were there back then?
like in the 300s. Yeah, when I first started.
And how about the actual Health ISAC full-time staff?
Oh, in the 20s, 25. I think I was like employee number 25 when I came on board.
Got it.
Yeah.
And how many, what's the full-time staff now?
We're at 50.
Okay. So you've 4x the membership and 2x the staff.
So yeah, and yeah, that sounds about right. And so creating all of the services, the primary mission for me when I got here was to create our threat operations center and everything about the information sharing capabilities that we had in terms of like what we were going to do to foster online communication, sharing between the members. And then, of course, we created our own threat intelligence capability. We subscribed to some services. We used some of that. We had some other partners that were sharing with us as well. And then being able to distribute that and share and create a capability to collect member submitted information as well. So, typical ISAC kinds of functions, but we also wanted to make sure that we were creating some original threat intel that we could provide as additional value for the membership.
The life expectancy of a really well-written intelligence report documenting the actor, their attack methods, who they target, the infrastructure they use, the tools they use, all of that used to be pretty long. How long do you think it is today, and how long do you think it'll be in 3 years?
Man, today it's 6 months, tops, right?
Okay. So there's still some advantage of running an intel-led approach. Obviously, you just need to figure out how to run it faster.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. But that's today. Yesterday, call it 10 years ago, 5 years ago, the reuse could have been years. How do you see that trending? Obviously, from years to 6 months is a tell, but how do you see it trending in the acceleration of that trend?
Yeah. And it's everything AI, right? So we can definitely kind of address that challenge there too. And it's we talk about the promise and peril. So the promise, all the great things that AI brings us, and then the peril, of course, all the danger that comes along with it. And we're in terms of like focusing on that, and at the risk of like bringing up somebody else that you've talked to, Nicole Perleroth, you know, um, I'll just give her a plug for her season 2, To Catch a Thief. I just wrapped that up, and as long as I've been in this business, as I was listening to that podcast, it dawned on me, and she basically like had to do like this to me, like, hey, smack me in the head with it. But, mapping out this entire path that North Korea has been on, thinking about like one of the big attacks, the Swift attack in 2016 and whatever they were doing before that, but the Swift attack in 16, and then shifting gears and going after crypto and how heavy they are there, and everybody she talked to just said that, thinking about what North Korea has been up to, as much as we know about AI right now, they're already like way ahead of us. And every step of the way along that chain that I just talked about, they've always been way ahead of us. So what are they doing now in AI and what's coming next is definitely a lot of the things that I worry about how an adversary can use that. Um, I think, we're seeing now, and of course, with the Glasswing project and all of that, the huge number of vulnerabilities that are being found and hopefully taken care of. And maybe that's going to be crazy for like another maybe 6 months or a year, I think. Our vulnerability management teams are going to hate all of us. But I think I'm hoping that that gets better eventually as fewer, we find all the vulnerabilities, all in quotes, and that job gets a little bit easier, and we start leveling off on that. But I really worry about the adversarial use and how they can create specialized LLMs that just focus on how to beat the system.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy, man. A mutual friend of ours that I will not share his name, is CISO at a public company, and you'll find this interesting. You hit it spot on around vulnerability patch management teams losing their marbles, and in the SEC filings, the risk section, they actually noted that they're going to have to assume more operational risk to accelerate their patching cycles, versus the 12-step process they used to go through. They're going to have to figure out a way to do it in 4 and accelerate the time they can roll the passes. And what comes with that is some operational risk. I mean, look at the update to CrowdStrike and how that knocked everybody off for so long, right? And they did a great job of bouncing back from that, and learning from it. But by the same token, it's just systematic that comes with time compression. You either have, a lot of time and you get it right, or you got a little bit of time and you can accept more risk.
Yeah, between that and the Change Healthcare incident, it's made believers out of everybody, especially in the health sector, about believers in resilience. So we're going to count on the fact that all these IT systems are going to drop out. We want to make sure that we can continue to be able to provide patient care when things like that happen. So there's a lot going on in that world, trying to make sure they can continue to operate and function.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, I think the whole Mythos Glasswing adoption is going to reorient that entire tech layer around what I call it as orchestration of viruses and vaccines, right? So, hey, here's this new flu that we found. This new, 0-day vulnerability discovered. What are 17 million variants possible, exploitation, variants to actually compromise that particular vulnerability and load up the vaccine across your entire tech stack. And that's Glasswing, right? So how do you can load up those vaccines at the same time you're discovering the viruses, or as soon as real time as possible, leveraging the same frontier models that found the virus in the first place. So that allows you to kind of scale down to the ecosystem of all your find and fix functions, because there's always remediation that is left, and that's all the automated find and fix stuff you're saying, autonomous pen tests and red teaming. And then you go on intelligence-led security, and it goes back to our original discussion on this as two guys that kind of grew up in the intelligence-led security industry together. As that obsolescence rate accelerates, the shelf life of that wonderfully written intelligence report goes away as the hardback in the library. It forces us to reimagine, how you run intelligence-led security. Of course, that's what we built at iCounter. And, ecosystem risk that you've been so central in the industry is our core. It's our first application of our counter threat operating system. Why? You and I have always been following the bad guys. If you want to know where the puck is going, the bad guy is creating it. He's the one passing the puck. So unless you look at what the bad guys are doing, you really have no idea how to forecast the future. And that's not been any more prevalent than it has been in third-party risk, ecosystem risk. You own the risk as a care provider, but all of the management of that risk sits in all these separate entities. You don't have control, insight, or enforce accountability of those third-party entities and the number of breaches through third parties has gone from 9% to 48% in the last 3 years. It's phenomenal.
Right. And yeah, ransomware is top of mind. It's been a problem since I got here, and it's still a problem today. I mean, the numbers are just enormous, and 26 is going to be another record year, without a doubt, from the numbers that we're seeing already.
Yeah, and as you know, ransomware is really today multifaceted extortion. It's just a way to extract money, and almost every ransomware attack comes with a breach, and every breach contains data of more companies than just the targeted ransomware victim. So that lends itself to what we were talking about as the 9 to 48%, because ABC healthcare company's data has a set of suppliers that have disparate amounts of their information. They get popped from a ransomware attack, their files get leased. Now your customer becomes the victim of a ransomware attack that he wasn't a party to directly. So that's kind of amplified this whole accelerant of third-party risk. And the reason we've shaped our whole approach around that problem set is, while intelligence-led security and threat detection and response is mainstream in an era of first-party risk, these big healthcare companies themselves, it's new and novel in the whole ecosystem risk of supply chain. Supply chain's all been posture. Remember the age-old equation, right? Threat times vulnerability equals risk. Well, it's really posture scoring masquerading as risk scoring. There hasn't been the threat side of the equation that's live and operational. So that's what we brought to the equation. And we can work with you and help out incorporate capability in healthcare or the Health ISAC, just structurally, right? I mean, you guys have your own capabilities for sure, but it is an interesting challenge that we face as an industry, and you as an ecosystem manager.
Right.
Your responsibility is the safety and welfare of the healthcare system and all of its participants, whether it's insurers or certainly your 1,200 members. But how many potential members are there for the Health ISAC globally? It's got to be, 12 million?
Yeah. Yeah. If you think about the size of like some of these organizations, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And when we talk to people, about their third-party risk challenges, we say it's not about the top 2%. It's not all the hyperscalers. Nobody's going to go through Microsoft to go to you. It's the bottom 98%.
Right.
It's your outsourced web hoster. It's your outsourced, your accounting services. It's your audit firm. It's your legal firm. Places that either have a store of data, they've got some of your sensitive information there. They're an access point into you, or if they fail, you fail. You all focus on you rolling a patch and you going down operationally. Well, what if they roll a patch and they go down and it happens to be CrowdStrike? Same kind of thing, and updates the product. So the whole statement of you're only as strong as your weakest link is that concept on AI. Wow. So I think we've done a good guide.
Moving fast. Yeah.
Yeah. So are you guys leveraging AI internally to just build productivity in everything you do?
Yeah, we are. We definitely are. We've got a couple of use cases in development right now. We've got a few things that we're working on, and it's really about enabling our analysts to move faster and be a bit more productive. So we've seen that for sure. Even internally, from Health ISAC, the company, and protecting our network, we're leveraging some of those AI type SOC services that are available today as well, right? So we can do some of that and be a little bit more diligent about protecting our own network, for example.
Well, you've seen the explosion of these tools out there. The marketplace is under such rapid transformation. It's going to be fun to see how this thing unfolds in the future. And I know you'll do your best to shape the defense of the health system, in America and worldwide. And we're certainly going to do the same, in our efforts serving the commercial and public sector as well. So prior to going to the NSA, rolling back the clock, little Errol, how did you get interested in computers in the first place? Why did you want to go study that?
Oh my gosh, wow. So I guess another school story. So just the local school system that I was in got computers in, and teachers were showing off some of what it could do, and that's literally what started me, getting interested in it.
Well, that interest was really, you saw it as a tool of disruption, as I recall,
Yeah, I don't know. Even then, it was just
and a tool of information acquisition through your early hacking skills.
yeah, maybe some early hacking skills, but it was more about learning how to program and doing some of that. So yeah, it was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Early times. Yeah.
Well, it's great to see you in the seat you're in. The health system should be proud to have you in the seat. And I look forward to working with you guys and you particularly in, coming years as we help figure out how to navigate this next wave of cybersecurity.
Hey, John. Yeah, it's been a blast working with you all the years, and look forward to our continued collaboration.
Yeah. Thank you, Errol. Appreciate your time. Thank you very much. And that wraps up another episode. Thank you for joining. For show notes and other episodes, visit us at watersedgepodcast.com. Water's Edge is sponsored by iCounter, built to maintain pace with a modern adversary with its AI-native, Intel-led security platform, powering the industry's first counter-threat operating system. We don't just monitor threats, we counter them.